Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Miranda. I'm a homeschooling mom to two and I'm obsessed with all things books. So today I'm going to be going over what I've been reading. I have a lot of YA and some middle grade in this selection. This isn't like a monthly roundup or anything. I just kind of do these as I go because if I wait till the end of the month, it's a ridiculously long video. So let's get started. First up, I have The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. This one is so good. I think I was a few chapters in and I decided to buy it because it was just so excellent. It is about a girl named Lee whose mother has recently committed suicide and she is reconnecting to her family who is over in Taiwan, who she has never met or seen in person, and her mom and her dad just didn't ever talk about them very much. When her mom was alive, it was an estranged kind of situation, and she is reconnecting with that culture that she has been so distant from her entire life. There is quite a bit of magical realism in this, which I always love. And it's just a really, really powerful read about dealing with the loss, especially when a family member commits suicide, and everything, all the feelings, all the guilt that comes with that, especially as a kid. So this one is just so good. I can't recommend it enough. She is an amazing author if you haven't read anything by her before. So this one, so good. Up next is All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This is a new release this year and it is so good. If you're familiar with this author, she wrote the Ember and Ashes series. This is very different if you've read that. So it's not similar at all, but it's very good. It is about two teens, both from Pakistani descent. One, his parents immigrated from Pakistan. He was born in America. But his mom dies of kidney disease very early on in the book. And his dad is a pretty much non-functioning alcoholic. And it is about him dealing with having to pick up all the slack of basically supporting him and his dad because his dad is not functioning. And just the horrid experience of having to take all that on as a teen is extremely moving. It is also about his friend named Misbah, and she is an immigrant from Pakistan herself after her family had died in an earthquake in Pakistan when she was very young, and her uncle took her in and is very resentful about having to raise her, and she comes from a very abusive situation there. And it is about racism, it is about bullying, it is about finding your place and trying to work your way out of a situation you had no control over. And it is just heartbreaking. It is so good though. I can't recommend this enough. It is just so good. It's a really well done YA drama. So that one is excellent. Up next is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is the same author of The Poet X, which is also an excellent book. This one is about two girls. Their father dies on an airplane flight. It is loosely based on Flight 587, the American Airlines flight that crashed in New York. Not the same time period. It's a made-up plane crash, but it is based on that crash. And put it in current times, if that makes sense. But these two sisters did not know about each other because their father had two separate lives, two separate families, and they had no idea until his death. So it is very interesting. It is really moving. It's written in verse, which I've been loving novels written in verse lately. So this was right up my alley. But it's just really good. It talks a lot about Dominican culture and what it's like being of Dominican descent, but not living there or being raised in the culture necessarily. So feeling like you don't belong quite in either culture. but it is so, so good. I really, really enjoyed this one, so highly recommend. Up next is Firekeepers Daughter by Angeline Bully. I was so nervous to start this book because it had gotten so much hype in the past year, but I am so glad I read it. It definitely lived up to the expectations. It is about a girl named Donis who is from a Native American tribe up in Michigan, and she is half white and half Native American. Her dad was Native American, her mother was not, and it does deal with the racism that comes with that, even in today's day and age. So that was very interesting. The main plot line centers around her becoming an undercover informant, or a confidential informant rather, to an undercover FBI agent who is investigating the meth situation within the tribe, because there have been a lot of meth-related deaths in the tribe, including, he wasn't in the tribe himself, but her uncle had recently died of an overdose, and she didn't know why, and several other people that she grew up with did. And it takes place right after the death of her best friend, who was shot by her ex-boyfriend, who was a meth addict himself. And that's kind of what launches her to being a confidential informant. But anyway, it is so good. It is so moving. It is just really, really interesting. I didn't want to put it down. I was just constantly reading it in the 2 days it took me to finish it. It's just exceptionally well written. The characters are very strong and really moving, and it talks a ton about the culture of her tribe, which I thought was fascinating. So I can't recommend this one enough because it's just so good. Do not be dissuaded by the hype around it because it deserves every ounce of hype it gets. So read it. Up next is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. It is by the same author who wrote Salt to the Sea and Between Shades of Grey. She is an exceptional historical fiction writer, and this one is no different. It is very, very good. It is about a teen boy living in Romania in 1989. So upon the fall of communism in Eastern Europe, and it is very good. I knew nothing about Romanian history prior to reading this book, or its role in, you know, communism and the dictatorship that was going on in there, and the horrid conditions that people had to live in that time for very, very long, much longer than other communist countries in the same region. And it was just so good to learn about that. I thought it was so important, and really unfortunate that I knew nothing about it prior to reading this book. But it did teach me a lot. He is an informant for the government prior to the fall of communism. And it talks about how common that is in Romania at the time that this is written. And it is just really interesting, and the state of fear everyone lived in, and rising up and fighting against that at the very end. And it was so good. It's just, I didn't put it down. It didn't even take me a full day to read this because I literally did not put it down the whole day. So it is so good. Highly recommend, and getting familiar with Romanian history in this because it's just really heartbreaking. So highly recommend I Must Betray You. Next is Ain't Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds, and artwork by Jason Griffith. This is a new release this year as well. And it is a book that is kind of, I'll just show you. So it's made up of poetry. It's Jason Reynolds after all, but it is also kind of a work of art in and of itself because it has very few words per page and is mainly composed of the art within. And I had mixed feelings about this. I did enjoy it because almost everything Jason Reynolds writes is extremely moving and powerful, and I enjoy it, but at the same time, I wanted more from it. And that really just results from there being really so little verse for such a thick book, because it is an art piece in of itself. And I know that's the intention. I was just hoping for a little more, but what is in here is really good. It's just, I wanted more from it, if that makes sense. So it is good. I would read it. I do recommend it. It's just go in knowing that it's mainly the art tells a story along with the words, so it's just as important. And I honestly didn't even know that going in, so that's my fault, but it is good. It is good. I'm used to his other stuff, so that's my fault. All right, and the last YA book I have to share with you is Olympus. This is a graphic novel focusing on the relationship between Hades and Persephone. I really wanted to like this. This gets nothing but rave reviews on Goodreads. It had like a 4.5 or 4.4, I can't remember, rating on Goodreads out of 5. I mean, it's constant. I think it won a Goodreads Choice Award. People always talk about how good it is. I was highly disappointed by this. Don't get me wrong, the art itself is gorgeous. It is really, really well drawn, and it's really pretty. Like, for example, I mean, it's just really, it is gorgeous, I'm not gonna lie. But the dialogue was awful. So YA, for a little background on me, YA is very hit or miss for me, just because sometimes it's a little cringy. Sometimes when the author just doesn't get the dialogue right or the plot right, it can sound a little, just, you know, like an adult trying to be a teen, and it's just not coming off well. And other ones don't do that at all, and it's very convincing. This one wasn't convincing at all for me, and I don't like romance plots, I'm gonna be honest. Like, if it's in a book with another plot going on, that's totally fine. But a plot centered around a romance exclusively, not my thing. I'm sorry, it's just not my thing. And I should have known that really going into this, but I was distracted by the fact that it was an adaptation of Greek mythology, which gets me every time. So I thought it'll be fine because I loved Song of Achilles, and that was an adaptation that really focused on a love story within Greek mythology. But this didn't do it for me. This was not Song of Achilles level for me. It was very cringy, the dialogue was, and I wasn't a fan. And it just sounded really, it was trying too hard, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I know people love this, and if you love it, I'm sorry. I just did not enjoy it at all. I think a lot of it had to do with the amount of hype it got to. I was expecting something better, and I just wasn't impressed at all. So I can't recommend it. Maybe love it. If you're into romance and you're into all things YA, this may be for you. It wasn't for me, but maybe it is for you. And moving on to the middle grade picks of this What I've Been Reading roundup. First we have Prairie Lotus by Linda Sue Park. Linda Sue Park is an exceptional historical fiction middle grade writer. She wrote A Single Shard, which is a classic. This is about Hannah, who is a Chinese American girl living in the 1880s in the developing West Prairie region of the United States. And it deals with her facing an incredible amount of discrimination and racism and hate from the white community, not wanting her to attend the same schools as their children and not wanting to do business with her and that kind of thing. I really, really enjoyed it. There aren't a ton of books describing, especially in the middle grade genre, about Asian Americans living in the US during this time, because they were there. It's, you know, it's not like they weren't existing there, but their stories aren't often told. And they faced a great amount of racism and challenges because of the horrid discrimination they faced. And it is just really important to see other stories told about the developing country in that time. And what I found very interesting in her author's note was she wrote this kind of as a coming to terms with the Little House on the Prairie series. She, you know, went back and looked at them as an adult, and it was very hard because as a kid, she loved them, and revisiting them, she, you know, realized how racist and some really horrible things that were in that series, and, you know, kind of providing an alternative to that same genre that isn't so grossly racist. So, you know, it's a hard thing. That series is still very popular. I mean, I read it as a kid. It was required reading in my second grade class. But, you know, revisiting as an adult, it's not great. It doesn't portray, and it's not just, you know, telling how things were. I mean, that is how things were, but it's not telling it in a way that's saying, look how bad this is. It was very much accepted. So it is really great to have other voices in that genre that provide a little more perspective, I think. So this is just really very good in my opinion. All right, and up next I read Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This one was so good. It focuses on a young girl named Amari Peters who discovers that her brother was part of a supernatural investigation bureau and had supernatural powers. And she is trying to find where he is because he has gone missing, but she is also joining the bureau herself. And it is just a really, really good book. It's very unique. A lot of people have been calling it the next Harry Potter. And I have to agree with that. It is very much felt like that when I was reading it. Not in a way of it's trying to copy or it's trying to be Harry Potter, but it very much felt like something that could definitely be as big as that. It's just, it takes a very unique look at magic and the supernatural and mythical creatures and stuff, and it was just very, very fun, very good. Definitely recommend if you have any Harry Potter or Percy Jackson lovers in your family and they're looking for something new. This was just a really, really fun read. I'm really excited to read the rest of the series as it comes out, so can't recommend that enough. Up next is What About Will by Ellen Hopkins. Ellen Hopkins wrote the Crank series. It has like a million books in it, and that was a YA series. This is a middle grade book. It is her, I believe, second middle grade novel, and it was so good. It is Ellen Hopkins, so it is written in verse. So if you're not into things that are written in verse, it may not be for you, but I love it. So it is about a boy who is dealing with his brother who, after a catastrophic football accident, has been acting very weird, has become addicted to pills, painkillers particularly. And it is about, you know, being a kid who, you know, has no control over their older family members and feeling lost in that and not knowing what you can do to help, even though you so desperately want to put things back together and make things right. And it is just really very good. It is so good at dealing with opioids and, you know, family members who fall victim to that and have a drug addiction in a way that's appropriate for middle schoolers. She's very, very familiar with writing about drug addiction. That's what the Crank series was about. So it is very interesting that she took that, you know, experience that she had writing about it and put it in a middle grade format. And it is so good. It is really very exceptional. So definitely recommend checking that one out. All right, and last I have the Beatrice Prophecy by Kate DiCamillo. This is a new release as well, and it is so good. It's Kate DiCamillo, so you know I'm probably gonna love it. She wrote Tale of Despereaux, because of Winn-Dixie, all those good ones. And this is a young girl named Beatrice, and she comes to this group of monks in the monastery, and doesn't know anything about where she comes from or what's going on, but she can read, and she's a girl, and that is not acceptable in this society, and that's very dangerous for her, and people are hunting after her. And it is about her realizing who she is and where she comes from, and some magical elements along the way. But it is very good. It's a very fun read. If you're a fan of Tale of Despero, you're definitely gonna like this, I think. Just because it has a very similar feel to it, in my opinion, but very, very good. All right, and that's a little mini wrap up of what I've been reading. I have some more to share as we go along in the month, but didn't want to make this video too exceptionally long, so those are just a few highlights and lowlights in some cases. But anyway, yeah, let me know below what you're reading currently, if you have any recommendations on what I should read or review. I'd love to hear it. So check out my Instagram. I post there daily. Until next time, bye.